transition. Most of you will have met me already this morning. My name is Katharina Faradsch. I moderate the session, and as such will be guiding through the different presentations, as well as, of course, the questions, answers, and poll questions that we have prepared. In this session, we particularly want to focus on a number of examples, so real hands-on examples of replicable business models that all contribute to a transition to a more sustainable, energy efficient and healthy cities in Europe and beyond, actually. So we focus on cases that are implemented without subsidies or funds. So that makes it maybe slightly different to what you might have heard before. So that's the unique selling point, I think, of the session. The session will consist of 5 presentations, one after the other. And as I said already, each presentation is going to be followed by a short section where you could pose your questions, or pose your questions as soon as you have them, but we will find a way to answer it then. Before we start with the presentation, I would love to give the floor to Leen Peters, who should now be turning on her video and microphone. And Leen will give us a bit more of a background to the objectives of the session. Leen, are you able to unmute yourself and turn on your camera? It did work earlier. Does it work for you now? Leen, are you able to join us? I see that you're online. Doesn't seem to be working, which is a real pity, because of course I can try to summarize them, but if they're coming from Leen, they're a lot better. Just checking if I can do anything about that. Nope, I think it's all. So Leen just left, so maybe she's going to try that again. So while we're waiting for Leen, we actually also prepared a little poll question. So in the back end of the session,
Katharina, yeah, I logged out and logged in again. I didn't do anything else, but sorry for that technical hiccup. Katharina already kind of introduced the approach that we took in designing this session, and to a large extent, what we want to provide you today is examples that are inspiring you, and that you can use to start yourself. I didn't want to come up with, millions of funding, because then you first have to go through the barrier of getting access to the funding, which is not always easy. Requests also a lot of taking administration, technical issues, and just also the fact that you have to build a team and things like that. Some cities just want to get started, and so the people that we've chosen fit in that picture, and each of them has something specific that they will dive into, and that is indeed what Katharina said, cases. We wanted to make sure that by the end of this session you have a good feeling of what such a case can actually be from A to Z, rather than have a broad overview with some generic aspects. So I hope that's going to be inspiring. And then Andreas will also explain you one of the, well, it's a funding principle, but it's a completely different thing. It's not a contest, the Elena application, which really helps cities throughout Europe to implement the changes that are maybe very normal, changing from single glazing to double glazing, installing PV. So really the help with getting that initiated, or organizing it for a group of public buildings, things like that. And I think that's a very inspiring story as well. So my objective for this session is that each of you can go home or can stay home, but close this participation with tangible, real-life experiences, and with the contact details that the different speakers will provide you with to get started yourself.
Thank you.
Success.
Thank you, and thank you also for making the technology work there on that end. So that's really good. Thank you. Perfect. And as I said, we would love to launch the question, a poll question to you, just before we move into the panel. So my colleague Agatha, who's going to be supporting us on the back end, is launching the poll question. You will need to scroll a bit, but basically the question that we have before starting is, what is the main barrier that you face during the implementation of replicable business models? And you have 3 options that are concrete and 1 that says other, because of course there might be other than those 3. And we would love you to pick one of those options and submit, which is a green button all the way on the bottom of that poll. So I will give you another minute. It's not a very long question to read. Answer options are also limited, but still, I know you want to think carefully about your answer. So just read it carefully, submit your answer. So don't forget to press the green button. Otherwise, your vote will not count. And I'll give it about 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And I would love to ask Agatha to please close the poll. And if you're able to share the results, that would be great. This morning it didn't work, but I keep my hopes up that it does work now. Agatha, you're able to show the results of that vote? Nope, doesn't seem to be. So Agatha, would you be able to tell us what the outcome of that vote is?
We have most of the voters that indicated that public contract rules are the main barrier. And then the lack of financing available. There are also some that reply that the level of innovation involved is the barrier.
Okay, so the first place was
public contracting.
Public contracting, yes. Oh no, no, that's not the results. That's already that's still the poll. But okay, we have the public contracting rules. That was the majority of people voting for that. The lack of financial funds was the second, and then the third option came. So thank you very much for this first snapshot of your view, which is going to give us a nice introduction into the first presentation, which we will hear now. Again, I'm asking only the presenter, yes, wonderful, to be visible with video and sound. So we'll hear now from Wouter Florizoone. As you know, Wouter, you can move the slides yourself. And this is the moment where I give the floor to your presentation on traffic counting by citizens.
Thank you very much, Katharina. My name is Wouter Florizoone. Good afternoon. I'm working for Transport and Mobility Leuven, in Leuven, of course, based in Belgium, university city close to Brussels. I'm going to briefly introduce you our product, Telraam, which is a traffic counter. And probably you might know this thing from your childhood. Normally in a physical session, I always ask who has played with it or is still playing with it. But now in a virtual session, it is not possible to go into interaction. So some of you might have played with it and others not. But in this case, we made a modern version of it. You can see it on the right side in the picture. It is a modern version of a Telraam, a BAXCo, Telraam in Dutch, a BAXCo in English, or a traffic counter as an explanation in English. And it counts vehicles, pedestrians, cyclists, and heavy traffic. So 4 modes of transport. And it's full automatic. It counts completely during the day, not at night. And through a website, you can see what are the results in your street. Now, Telraam is not only set up by ourselves as a company, as a research company, Transport and Mobility Leuven, but we cooperate for this product with Mobile 21. They also have a lot of investigation and projects at European level, and we also work with the web developer for this project. Now, who can benefit from this product? Of course, citizens, because this is a way to go into interaction, into dialogue with their local authority, but also professionals and policymakers, because if you have a dense network of different traffic counters in your city or in your neighborhood, as a policymaker, you can figure out a lot of information concerning mobility, concerning circulation, concerning roadworks, and so on. If you open it up, the black case, it's filled with a lot of stuff. At the bottom side, you can see the Raspberry Pi, which is a low-cost computer unit doing a lot of calculation work. The Raspberry Pi isn't something new. It exists already for several years. It has been launched due to investigation work, and now there's even an association promoting the product from the University of Cambridge. At the top side, you can see the code. Colleagues of me, they've been working quite a long time to set up the code. We have a camera in combination with a low-cost computer. At the bottom side, you can see another Pi. We have the Raspberry Pi, but you have also Pis explaining the model split concerning transport. And this product, you can deal with it as a local authority, or even as a citizen, or as a neighborhood, for example, a neighborhood responsible person, in different ways, different interactive and participative approaches. You can do it in a kind of a contribution way or in a collaboration way, but in most of the cases where we work, it is full co-creation. So really a bottom-up initiative giving good results, and so the local authority can do something with the measurement data. If you set up a dense network, then you will have a lot of benefits coming from the data. The data is continuous. As I said, during the day, it gives multimodal information from 4 modes of transport, and it is really cost efficient, because if I explain you that this device is less than €100, of course, then you can set up a dense network with a lot of traffic counters. If you would go on the website, telraam.net, and you click on one street segment, then you can see the information for this street segment with a lot of figures, a lot of graphics for 24 hours, a graphic with the information, for example, for the direction, which is important, for example, in just one direction streets, giving a lot of information. The session was more or less to give an idea from business models really coming without any funding, but in this case we got some funding. Really at the start of this project, we got some federal funding from the Belgian government. It was a limited funding just for 1 year, and after 1 year we could see a lot of advantages, benefits from this product, so we completely worked afterwards without any funding. Just until now, up till a few months, because we got new funding from the European Commission to set up this product at European level in comparison with, in collaboration with European universities and different cities. So this is an overview of the website. If you go to the website, we can give a lot of results, and if you dig into the information, if you're doing a traffic analysis, we can, for example, figure out cut-through traffic, but also morning rush hours, the impact of roadworks, speeding, alternative routing examples. There's a lot of information coming out of these traffic counters. As I said, European funding as well. We got this funding under the SWAFSCo, and when BBC came up with an article about Telraam, then it immediately exploded. A lot of interest from a lot of local authorities to set up their own network. It's all about teamwork. So this is the group of the Telraam people we're working with in the different organizations. And as I said, it's only a brief introduction. I had to stick with the time, and I'm looking forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Wouter. Thank you very much for that very interesting presentation. Just wondering, and I hope that everybody found the place to put your questions. So it's the little question mark on the left side panel. Please put them there. If you want, we can of course also get you live so that we can see you when you ask your question. But if you feel more comfortable typing them, that's of course also fine. So please just put them in the question box. So as long as we just see when the questions are coming in, Wouter, I think you highlighted, I know that you had to go very quickly, but you highlighted that you managed to, for the most part, work without public funding. Was that difficult?
Yes, that's not easy at all, because especially for the fact that we need a lot of development to set up this project, a lot of back office development to set up this kind of technology. But if you can work from existing organizations with some profit, the profit can go to new explorations, just as in our case to Telraam, and that's the way we, with some little help from the organization, we could set up this project. But it isn't easy at all. No.
Okay, and if you say now, I mean, it looks like it's easily replicable, the solution of Telraam. But do you see differences across municipalities, but also maybe across countries in approaching something like that? I'm also looking about like data protection and so on.
Yeah, it's really easy to set up a network, a dense network with different traffic counters in your own city. You even don't need a city. You can do it also at the level of a small remote village, for example. Traffic data is interesting for a lot of purposes. But in the case of if the information is concerning, your question was concerning privacy, concerning data, concerning protection. Of course, before setting up this project, we consulted the National Belgian Authority concerning this, also concerning GDPR rules and so on. And there was an official formal information from their part that there's no problem at all. The biggest difference in comparison with video and camera, for example, is the fact that we are not streaming. There's no continuous video camera or a camera working and taking data or video material from the street. It's only taking pictures, and of course I would need a lot of time to explain how it works technically, but it only takes pictures, and it's the comparison of the pictures with the objects in the field of view of the camera. That's for us the base of the information to classify the different modes of transport. Of course, within the deployment of the Abacus, the traffic counter now at European level, we are in communication with through the local authorities, but also universities concerning the same question, and there hasn't been any question until now in the different countries where we are working at this moment. And I'm talking about Spain, Slovenia, Ireland, for example, the UK, and also in Germany. Yeah.
Okay, so there are quite some different legislations to keep in mind also there. But okay, thank you very much. And as a technical lay woman that I am, I need to understand that you were saying it was taking pictures, but you wouldn't be able to identify people or car license plate or anything like that on your pictures. So it's very data insensitive in that sense.
That's correct. It's not an ANPR number plate recognition camera, for example, or if sometimes we can see these images or even videos from China popping up with face recognition. That's not the way how we work. It's only object detection and classification of different objects.
And then maybe as a last question, what's the reaction of the local policymakers on the results that you can share?
Well, they nowadays we're really in full deployment in Belgium, but also in different European cities. They are really wild if we're talking about Telraam, because it gives a lot of information, and it is really a cockpit for the mobility officer in a city or a local community. So they're really grateful with these with all this data coming up. It's very positive at this moment. There's a lot of positive response. So and that's why we're looking forward to the future for further deployments and even going beyond Europe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, I think, a technology that's easily replicable outside of the European context. So I think
a minor remark, maybe others are unable to write questions.
Oh no.
In the question mark, so I put my question to Wouter in the chat window. It's already answered, by the way.
Okay, thank you, Leen, for highlighting that technical difficulty there. So indeed, then I encourage everybody to put your question in the chat box, which is just on the same panel. But then we can still answer that. But I saw that also indeed Wouter in writing already answered the question while talking, which is a very good multitasking activity there. Thank you, Wouter, for this presentation and also for answering these additional questions. I would now like to give the floor to our second presenter, Antoon Soete. So Antoon, if you could turn on your video and camera, then we would be able to see and hear you for the presentation. My computer is very, very slow at these moments, trying to change the slides. Maybe, Antoon, you're quicker. Yeah, just try to move to your presentation.
Okay.
It is doing so for me.
Everybody is hearing me?
I can hear you very well. Yes, wonderfully. And as soon as you're ready to go, I would invite you to share your presentation with us.
Yeah. Well, good afternoon to everybody. It's always difficult to say hello to somebody you don't see. But anyway, so I'm Antoon Soete. I'm one of the co-founders of Wattson, and Wattson is an ESCO company. For those who are not quite familiar with ESCOs, these are companies dealing with energy performance contracting. So that's the core business of our company. We are mainly focusing on retirement homes, schools, and also public building portfolios. We have been created in 2016, and in the meanwhile, we are able to invest for almost 35 million euros. So it's becoming substantial. We are also keen in innovating and in investing in innovation, and so that's the reason why we are also a member of Flux 50. But coming back to energy performance contracting, so in the end, what is the ambition of such a contract? So let's say you are a municipality, you want to make your public buildings portfolio more sustainable, but you are lacking money, for instance, or you are lacking the resources. Then it's interesting to start working together with a party like an ESCO. Because the ESCO will audit, of course, first of all, your portfolio. Based on these audits, they will propose an investment program, and that investment program in energy efficiency measures, but also in renewable energy, will result in a reduction of your energy bills. And the crux of an EPC contract is that during the EPC contract period, you will give that delta to the ESCO company, and in return the ESCO company will finance these investments and will also take care of the operations and the maintenance of these installations, and in the end it will also sign off an energy savings guarantee towards the client. So it's something which is already in the news for many years, but there are not yet that many ESCOs active, so to say. It's still emerging business. I compare it a little bit with the situation of renewables 10 years ago. We are now with energy efficiency where renewables was 10 years ago. So I have only a very limited time schedule, so I only can briefly sketch some elements, because we are now working already 5 years in this business, and we have observed some lessons learned that I would like to share with you, and something to keep in mind if you consider working together with ESCOs or starting to think in energy performance contracting. So first of all, I would like to show you a typical case. This is a retirement home in my hometown, so it's a very typical one. It's built in the 1990s. It has an energy cost of 70,000 euros per year. The municipality was, of course, already interested in doing already something in order to reduce energy consumption, and they have invested in a relighting program that is already established. And based on audits, you can say that the typical energy savings potential of such a building would be 30%, for which you need 150,000 euros to get to that 30%, if you consider a 10 years contract. The question then is this something which you can put into an energy performance contract? And unfortunately for the people, I have to disappoint you. This is not really an interesting case for EPC. And why is that? That's because several reasons. First of all, if you want to consider energy performance contracting, then it's very important that you're open for a sufficient scale of buildings that you would like to put under an EPC contract. So one building versus a portfolio of building, that makes a huge difference whether you can get an ESCO interested in your issue, in your problem, yes or no. Another one is also, you should go for an integrated approach. So instead of focusing on low-hanging fruit like relighting, it's important to go for an integrated solution, so where you consider low-hanging as well as the more difficult energy savings measures, like for instance a new boiler room, which has a payback of 10 years and even more. But by combining them, you can come to an interesting case. Another element is also think in terms of trias energetica, so energy efficiency. If you can combine it with renewables, that's also very important to get to a bankable case. And lastly, that's something which is for me very important. Please think try to develop smart procurement rules, so that there is not that much red tape for the ESCOs, because red tape is being translated in a higher risk margin, and in the end, you as a client, as a public institution, you will pay more euros for less energy savings. So that's also an important element that I will shortly describe now in the 5 minutes I have left. So what we have done with Wattson is, for instance, we have included such a retirement home like I shown in the picture. But instead of one, we have integrated, or we have built a portfolio of more than 10, even up to 40 different retirement homes in one portfolio. And that's important because the bankability and the risk of such a portfolio is substantially lower than if you look at an individual case where only 150,000 euros will be invested. Bankability because Wattson as a company has also to find the funds to invest in these cases. And in order to refinance such a portfolio, that's much easier to get a ticket from a bank of 2 million, for instance, compared to get a ticket for only 150,000 euros. Because for them, the research and the desk work takes almost the same in times of hours and resources. So for them, there is definitely an economy of scale to go for larger portfolios. But on the other hand, it's also important to think about the risk mitigation, because energy savings, there is always some kind of a risk about the level of savings you can achieve. So if you have a portfolio of more than 10 buildings, in the end, it's the average which counts, and in the end, this can be used to mitigate, in fact, the risk that's in the portfolio due to some retirement homes where the savings would be lower than expected. So that's a very important element. Secondly, low-hanging fruit is also important, and that's I guess the PowerPoint will be available to everybody, so you can always look at it. But if you look at the portfolio where you look at, for instance, at Wattson, we look at portfolios with an average payback of 8 years. That we can make bankable in a contract period of 10 years. But if you would reduce or already if we have to put out the low-hanging fruit, think of relighting programs, smart optimization of the control systems of the HVAC, then you end up with paybacks of 10 years and even more. So this makes it much more difficult for an ESCO to come to a bankable solution. So, and by just combining low-hanging fruit and the more difficult ones, you come to an integrated approach, which is more balanced and which is much easier to finance than in case that the ESCO would only have to deal with the more difficult solutions like new boiler rooms that need to be installed. Renewables is also important because I can only say something very shortly. Like I said in the beginning, there is more risk about the energy savings potential of energy efficiency measures compared to renewables. Renewables, like PV, it's a standard solution, and there is a counter running for each megawatt or kilowatt hour that's produced. It's being counted. And there is only a very small variation in terms of uncertainty. If you compare a portfolio which consists only of energy savings measures compared to a portfolio where you also include some renewables, then you see that it's much more difficult to get to the financing rules, like for instance debt service coverage ratio that you need to attain in order to get your finance from the banks. Then it's much more difficult to come to interesting rates if in case you would only focus on energy savings compared to a situation where you also integrate some renewables in your portfolio. So therefore, we are very keen in combining renewables together with energy efficiency, not only because it's an element of the Trias Energetica, but also because it makes your business case more solid and more easy and more profitable, so to say, and more easily to get it bankable. A last one, and I don't have no minutes left, but I hope I can still continue for 1 minute. One of the problems one of the issues is that in public procurement there is many companies and many municipalities, they opt for a rather difficult and long procedure with a lot of risk towards the ESCO. And it's important to stress an ESCO in order come to a decent proposal, a lot of the homework has already to be done at the beginning of the project. So we need to calculate the total cost of ownership. And in order to do that, you really need to go and visit the buildings, make your audits, do a lot of analysis. And that's all at risk because, yeah, it's a public procurement. So if there are many companies participating and the public municipality and the city, they want from the ESCOs that all these ESCOs come with a full and decent proposal, so for the whole portfolio, then there is quite some work to be done at front, at risk. So our proposal would be that you, instead of getting a competition between 5 or even more ESCOs, to reduce the number of the ESCOs which are really being challenged to start with the analysis of the portfolio, and even there are some procedures possible where you say, okay, there is one ESCO which is really selected, and this one is then starting to consider the whole portfolio in detail. And if it's not successful, then you can maybe ask the second one. But in this respect, you reduce the risk for the ESCOs dramatically. And in the end, this will result in more energy savings for a lower cost. And that's also important, in my opinion, to get ESCO and EPC work to get a breakthrough in this beginning market. But we are convinced that it's a market with a huge potential in the European Union. And that's it, I guess. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Antoon. I'm looking at the chat to just see if there's anything. But also, Antoon had a question towards you as the audience. Are you already involved in ESCO business? So there's this poll question again that should pop up on your window. You have 2 answer options, which is relatively straightforward. Yes, no. And we would just like to get a feeling of your experience with that. And we can actually see the results live, which is very good. Thanks for fixing that, Agatha and Vanessa. And it seems, yeah, there is already a bit of experience of being involved in the ESCO business, but many that are still freshmen to this idea. So that's, of course, also a good position to start in. We also have 2 questions that I would like to ask you shortly to respond to. First of all, for a question from Leen, is it upscalable to an international model? Would it de-risk a portfolio?
I think so. Yes. Well, it's the law of the big numbers, so to say. If you can create portfolios which where, for instance, 200 or 500 rest homes are being integrated, yeah, then in the end the risk level of such a portfolio will decrease, because each individual rest retirement home is less important in such a huge portfolio. Of course, we should be aware that also legislation, regulatory elements might be different in the different countries. So, as I understand from financial institutions, they are really looking for as much standardization as possible. So that's the the other element which we should integrate in such an analysis. But definitely, the more you can include in such a portfolio and such a fund, the better, I would say. And then you can even come to to situations where you can, in fact, rebrand, in fact, that fund and resell it to other parties. But in order to get to such a situation or such solutions, you really need very huge tickets. Then you are speaking about funds of, let's say, 100 million. Then that's we are ambitious, but we are not yet there.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. And then a short question from Andreas. Piontek, who was the aggregator for this portfolio of projects?
What do you mean with the aggregator? So. In our portfolio, what we have been doing is we are working, for instance, for private retirement homes. These are companies which have already each more than 100 retirement homes. So then it's easy. Then you have a deal. You sign off an EPC contract with one of these parties, and you have an immediate portfolio available of 100 retirement homes. For public clients, we have also been working in a portfolio of 10 buildings, for instance. Then it's the facilitator, like they call it in Belgium. It's a party. Mostly an engineering company who is assisting the municipality in setting up the portfolio that they would like to offer to the market, and where ESCOs can then come with their best proposal. So I would advise to municipalities which are not really familiar with this type of work to get in touch with some facilitator, because these people have the skills and also speak the language of the ESCOs. And that's important if you really come to an EPC contract. Yeah, then it's very important that everybody has a very good understanding of the different paragraphs of such a contract. And in that respect, a facilitator can bring added value to a city and a municipality.
Okay, thank you very much. And I mean, I saw Andreas was there to answer the question, what's an aggregator, but since he's disappeared again from the view, I guess you answered this question right over there. So thank you very much, Antoon, for this presentation on the ESCO experience. And I would now like to invite our third speaker, Ms. Soo-Jin Kim, to share her camera and activate the audio so that we can hear her and see her presentation. She will give us actually a perspective that even goes beyond Europe, and the experience of the OECD and the insights on smart cities and inclusive growth. Soo-Jin, floor is yours.
Yes, exactly. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for having me here. So I guess in contrast, maybe with the other speakers, I'm not from a municipality and I'm not a solution provider. I work at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, an international organization based in Paris that provides policy advice to 36 member countries all over the world. And my team supports more particularly cities and national ministries in charge of cities and urban policy. And these are people who have all kinds of headaches, how to make cities economically stronger, create more and better jobs, be more sustainable, be more inclusive, and also in the COVID context, healthier and safer. And so in this challenging task, smart cities initiatives are really playing an increasingly important role, which is why we have created a dedicated program for it. And this is what I wanted to share with you today. Basically, what you see and what we observe really is that not a week goes by without a new smart cities event somewhere in the world, right? And even though not all cities can replicate, Singapore or Barcelona, almost every city that we encounter does have some sort of smart city initiative or ambition. And if you ever tried Googling smart cities, which probably all of you have, do you remember you get about, I think, 800 million entries in half a second. But have you noticed that you actually have to scroll down to, I don't know, page 10 or something to actually get images of people in these famous smart cities. All you get before that is symbols, robots, machines, drones, and things like that. So I think it reflects the fact that smart city solutions, at least at their beginning, often focus on the question of how to use technology to improve the efficiency of various urban public services, such as traffic, as we heard before, water, energy, and things like that. But these smart city initiatives are also gradually shifting, or at least I think they should be shifting to a broader reflection on what this technology is actually for, and which can help achieve more environmental and social objectives as well, and contribute to making cities truly more sustainable and inclusive. So, of course, smart cities are done with technology, but they are not about technology only. It's really about people and putting people back at the center, and letting people's needs drive the smart city rather than the opposite. In terms of timing, even though, of course, smart cities have been part of the policy agenda for, I don't know, at least the past 2 decades, I think smart city solutions have proved even more critical than ever in recent months, since digital tools have helped compensate for the lack of physical proximity, for example, through e-commerce. I think we've all been ordering online during lockdown months, online education, digital visits of museums and digital cultural content, etc. But as you probably discussed maybe in earlier sessions this morning, cities and regions are really not equally hit by the crisis. And for example, in the map on the left that you see here, the share of jobs that are at risk from COVID containment measures really varies from less than 15% in some regions to more than 35% in some cases, or even half of jobs in some OECD regions. So cities and regions are not equally hit, but they're also very unequal in their capacity to face the crisis and to maintain economic activity. And the graph here on the right shows that the share of jobs that can be teleworked varies also very much, both across different countries and within countries. So, for example, more than half of jobs can be teleworked in London, versus only 30% or so in Istanbul. So the message is really that the ability to use digital technologies and smart city tools in an agile and creative manner will be a key asset for cities' recovery and resilience in the future. So this is why, in this context, our OECD program on smart cities focuses on these 3 priorities that you see on the screen. So first, to really refocus the concept of smart cities around how they improve lives of all people. So really linking smart cities and a more inclusive type of growth. Secondly, to measure how smart cities perform in terms of well-being outcomes, and not just how many sensors have been installed or how much funding went into a given equipment, for example. And thirdly, to provide guidance both to cities and to national governments in using smart city tools, in reforming their own governance models, for example, in using public procurement for smart and sustainable objectives, and engaging with a wide variety of stakeholders. So this means that smart city tools are really not just the business of cities or the private sector. It's also national governments and other levels, including the European level, that really have a key role to play. And all citizens, including the most vulnerable ones, should be the ultimate beneficiaries. There are, of course, countless examples, really, of smart cities initiatives around the world. And I know that my fellow panelists are sharing, very interesting practical examples from European cities. So here I just wanted to flag a few others, either in OECD countries such as Korea, Canada, Switzerland, and Australia, or even beyond, Brazil, Russia, or Saudi Arabia, where in fact the national government is providing a sort of enabling policy framework that helps stimulate bottom-up initiatives from cities, and sometimes also does provide financial support, which is always helpful. So this These national frameworks will help, for example, provide a checklist, a smart city checklist, to help cities, define the different steps they need to take to get to a functional smart city, and that's the case in Korea. The Smart Cities Challenge that Canada has been running for some years now has a great role in pushing and stimulating, cooperative initiatives, and including in some of maybe more vulnerable groups, such as the Indigenous communities in Canada. And then in other non-OECD countries, for example, Brazil has been pushing for the concept of 30-minute cities, where accessibility to services, to urban public services, is facilitated. And there are various mechanisms and frameworks that are in place to support cities in developing their own initiatives. So you can find a lot of further examples and key lessons in our policy paper entitled Smart Cities and Inclusive Growth, which you can find on our website. And the 5 key messages really are, again, to link smart city initiatives to people's well-being directly, that it's not just the job of cities or solution providers to make sure that cities become smart. It's also a job for all other levels of government, including national governments, who often play a role in regulatory frameworks, for example, or legal frameworks. It's also important to measure the outcomes and not just the inputs or the investments. The smart cities of the future also cannot be governed with traditional governance models from the past. And all this will require, of course, quality data and evidence. So due to time constraints, I'll just stop here. I'll leave you, of course, our website and our contact. We are organizing a number of events and also supporting, with different case studies. So I'll be happy to share all that. And if you have any questions, of course, please do let me know. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Soo-Jin, for this presentation, and also for broadening our, I think, often European-centric view to what's going beyond, on beyond the European boundaries. There is one question which I think is very appropriate, looking at these very diverse countries you were mentioning. How is culture influencing the ambition of cities and the effective advancement to implementation?
Okay, sorry, I think I had turned my microphone off, so it's back again. Yeah, that's a very important question. I think some countries have been a bit pioneers in a way in the smart city concept, and sometimes it hasn't been labeled as smart cities necessarily at the beginning. So, for example, I'm thinking of both Korea and Japan, where, for example, Korea, which actually turns out to be my own country, but in Korea, they had started, almost, I think, in the 70s, if I remember correctly, or even 80s later on, with the concept of ubiquitous city, which, if you think of it now, can be thought of as a sort of an ancestor for smart cities. But the idea was really to try to control this urban expansion, which was very rapid and difficult to manage. So when you have cities that develop very quickly into mega cities of 10 million or even more people, policymakers are very quickly faced with the difficult task of, how to make sure that we improve the efficiency of public services, even basic public services, and how can you control and monitor traffic, and how can you make sure that energy provision is better, and things like that. So, and also, I guess, the use of technology such as, surveillance cameras or that kind of tools was very well accepted in those countries back then, because I guess the consensus was that the goal was really to improve, the community, the life of the community. So I think there was a buy-in and public support as well very quickly. Now I know that in some of our member countries, the appetite for smart cities has come in maybe a little bit later and also in different forms. I mean, just following up on the example of cameras, there is some cultural resistance, you know, to the fact that some cities or governments might be proposing to install cameras just to improve safety in some neighborhoods, but some population groups or some communities will not really see that as a smart city initiative or a progress. They will see, I guess, more concerns in terms of privacy, for example, and data protection and things like that. So there are definitely some cultural differences that are at play. But I think also that local contexts are very specific, and that it should be probably really up to each local or regional community to define really the needs of their own residents, and to engage also in consultations to define really what is the most appropriate, which is actually, I think, one of the factors of success for smart cities initiatives.
There's no solution that fits them all, I guess.
Exactly.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Soo-Jin, for your presentation and for answering this audience question. I would now like to invite our fourth speaker, Andreas Piontek, to share his camera, turn on his camera and audio. Andreas has been with us already this morning and highlighting a couple of times a very interesting system called Elena. And now I would like to ask you to give us finally more details on this. And the floor is yours, Andreas.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Andreas Piontek. I'm working for the European Investment Bank in the project directorate on energy efficiency and renewable energies. And I am working also on the technical assistance, Elena. Elena is technical assistance, which has been established more or less 10 years ago, or even more than 10 years ago. It's based on the agreement between the European Commission and the EIB. It's managed by the EIB, where the financing is coming from Horizon 2020 Research and Innovation Program. It's a grant which we are providing to the final beneficiaries for the preparation of investments in energy efficiency. It's not a grant for the implementation. It's really related to the preparation of the investments. And the first question which was posed before the session started, it was perfect introduction to Elena, because Elena can cover these barriers and remove the barriers, so it can provide you with the assistance that is needed to, for example, to deal with the public contracts or to deal with the looking for financing. Until today, we had more than 100 projects, of which for which more or less more than 180 million euro was awarded for project implementation, and the resulted investment should be of around 6.6 billion euro. How we works, we are looking for investment programs that can be supported through Elena. The minimum investments which we are looking, which should be realized within the duration of the project in the next 3 years, it's 30 million euro. The grant provided under Elena covers up to 90% of the preparatory costs, project development support cost. We work on the principle first come, first serve. It's not like the standard commission projects where you have one call and then you have one shot. We really work with the project in the preparation to make them happen. We have a budget per year between 30 and 50 million euro. We are not looking for projects or for ideas that can be supported. We are looking for projects which have a certain maturity. So the project have to show that they know what they want to do. They know what are the constraints, why they cannot invest. make the investments and why they need Elena. Elena provides a grant, but it's with the grant comes an obligation to make the investments. So it means if you are receiving Elena, you have the obligation to make the investments within the next 3 years. For sustainable energy projects, your obligation is to make 20 times the investments for which you got the grant. So as example, municipality received €2 million grant for the preparation of the investments. So in the end, after 3 years, around 40 or more than €40 million investments should be presented as supported from the Elena project. For residential building sector and urban transport, this leverage factor, this requirement is 10. In case the leverage factor is not achieved, we asking, so the beneficiary will have to pay partly the money back depending how much investment has been achieved. The investment do not have to be implemented immediately. There is a 3 years period for implementation for energy efficiency project and 4-year implementation period for the transport. In case of public beneficiaries, this implementation can happen even after the project is finished, because we accept publication of the public tender for the investment as investment achieved. Who can benefit from Elena? It can be public sector, so it can be local, regional, or even national authorities, other public bodies, energy agency or association, and of course grouping of such authorities or bodies. We work also with private sector entities, banks, or insurance companies, for example, can apply for Elena. The entities should not, or Elena should not support product development and business development of private companies. And should not, so the end effect should not be that through Elena, this entity is doing producing profit. What kind of investment program can be supported through Elena? And under the sustainable energy, we support renovation of public and private building, street and traffic lighting, integration of renewable sources into the buildings, investment in district heating, cooling networks, and local energy facilities that support energy efficiency and renewable energies, so smart grids. The investment program doesn't need to be implemented by the final beneficiary, so by the party which is asking for Elena, but the final beneficiary can support other entities. So for example, if you have a regional agency, this regional agency can, or regional authority, this regional authority can support investments in local communities or local cities. The same, for example, for private beneficiary, if we work with, if Elena is supporting a bank, the bank can provide Elena technical assistance for preparation of investment, for example, in housing association. And so the investor are then the housing association. For the urban transport and mobility, the investment to support, Elena is providing support to for the investment to support the use and the integration of innovative solutions going beyond the current state of alternative fuels in urban mobility. It supports vehicles, electrical vehicles, the charging infrastructure, energy efficiency measures, and systems. How you can get Elena? It's very easy process. on the one side, but you need a commitment to do this because it takes also some time to go through the whole process. At first, you contact us. It's very simple, elena@eib.org. Then you prepare a pre-application. It's 2 or 3 pages with basic information. What are the needs of the project? What will be the potential investments? And what will be the investment costs? We verify if the program is eligible, because it's not always like this. And then you receive, if the program is eligible, you receive the application. We are asking there for some more detail. It's some little bit thicker document, but there we need some detailed information which we have to present to the European Commission, who is providing the grant. So it's the final decision of the Commission. We work with you interactively. So it's not that you send us the application and then it's done. We ask questions, but we are also helping, and then mainly we're helping you to prepare the application, so that the Commission will not hopefully ask many further questions and the project is approved. So after we achieve the final version, we send a request to European Commission for the approval. And if the Commission approves it, we prepare the funding agreement. So you sign the contract with us and the project can start. As I mentioned, we have more than 100 projects across more or less the whole Europe. We covered more or less all countries. And at the end of my presentation, I would like to present you 2 case studies, as we are in Brno. So one of them is in Czech Republic, the other one is in Poland. And I will start with the Polish project. So we support through Elena and bank BNP Paribas, Bank Polska. The objective of the investment is to support housing association refurbishment in residential building in Poland. The expected or the target for the end investments is around 80 million euro, and the bank is receiving support of around 3 million euro. The grant is provided to the bank to set up a service package which is provided to the homeowner associations. And the service package includes performance of energy audits, preparation of the technical documentation needed for the renovation, and the service package provide the specialized technical assistance to the housing association because they do not have the required knowledge on what needs to be done in the most effective way. The second program is Smart Central Bohemian Region program. It's a region in Czech Republic which asks for Elena support to prepare energy performance contracting for the refurbishment for support for the refurbishment of their buildings mainly to the energy performance contracting. They expect to have investment of more than 60 million euro within the next 3 years, and they requested more or less 2.5 million euro of support from Elena. And the support is provided to the region to develop energy audits and assess the baseline for the investment. So to prepare, to assess the buildings of the Central Bohemian region that can be implemented, refurbished through energy performance contracting. And also the technical assistance provides support to the region in the terms of preparation of investment tenders for the EPC contracts and also supports them in requesting financial support to the regional operational program. As it was said in the beginning, through EPC contracts, investments can be realized that have short payback time, but in most cases, when you go into the deep renovation, the payback time is quite long. And to reduce this payback time, also to make it interesting, such investments for ESCO's company, there is money available under the operational program in Czech Republic, which supports the financing of this program. So the technical assistants also support the region in obtaining this financial support. And yeah, this was in short what Elena is doing. You can find all the examples of ongoing project and finished projects on our Elena website. There are plenty of questions available with answers that you can get on the site, and you can of course contact us or me directly, and then I will try to answer all your questions.
Thank you very much, Andreas, for this presentation. I have allowed you to go over like quite some minutes because I thought you wanted to give the details. But that means that time for questions is relatively short, and I don't see any immediate questions. Again, you see Andreas' contact details in the attendees list, of course, and as well as you can find, of course, more information on Elena online. So if okay with you, Andreas, I would like to move to the next presentation, also looking at time, which is our final presentation. And I would like to ask Rolf Bastiaens to turn his camera and sound on so that we can move ahead with our last presentation. Rolf, there you are. Great. Thank you for joining us. And the floor is yours for your presentation. We cannot hear you yet.
Sorry, now it should work.
Yes.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Katharina, Leen, and others for the invite. So my name is Rolf Bastiaens, and I'm the founder of Starke Energy. I will get into my presentation in a minute, but before I would, although Andreas, I've met you in a different phase of my career. For the people listening in, the European Investment Bank's Elena program really is the most effective way of preparing your large-scale energy investments. Really, it sounds complex, and the European Investment Bank might sound like a complex and scary partner to work with, but there's no other tool available in Europe to prepare for large-scale building investments. So do reach out to Andreas. What I would like to talk about is, in the coming 5 or 6 minutes or so, is the energy transition that we now all are going through across Europe is based on local sustainable energy, electrification, especially of our buildings. We put up PV panels on our buildings. Inside residential buildings, we switch from gas heating, for example, to electric heating, or we even switch from cooking electric to electric. And while all of that helps to become more sustainable, since we can generate that energy in a sustainable way, it also leads to a very imbalanced energy system. And an imbalanced energy system is incredibly expensive. And so what Starke Energy provides, commercially as well, is a way of reducing the imbalance in energy systems at building level and at district level. And we believe that that's one of the many tools available to make sure that sustainable energy becomes available on a short term and the lowest possible cost. Looking back at the introduction that Leen and Katharina gave, looking at this session is about commercial services, but at the same time looking at, let's say, commercially viable services. I really would like to reflect on the points that Antoon mentioned 2 or 3 presentations ago. And that's really especially also a message to the local authorities in this, actually participating in this call. There's so many solutions out there that make sustainable energy viable, but it really depends on scale. For many local authorities, getting into a new technology solution is scary. You want to start at pilot scale, but piloting is really not a way to get the private sector involved. Scale is critical. And public procurement still is a, well, pain in the ass, but public procurement, it does not really help us move forward. And hopefully the last part of this this conversation, when you wrap it up, for me it would be really interesting to see if we can reflect on that scale and trying for local authorities, trying to connect the ambition that we all have, the policy ambition to become sustainable, and link that with partnerships with the private sector. Beyond that, I'm trying to scroll through my slides. That might take a second. Hold on. As mentioned before, buildings, could be commercial buildings, could be residential buildings, are quickly becoming more electric or becoming electrified. We generate solar energy, which obviously reduces our immediate energy footprint, but at the same time, most building owners or investors do not realize that we probably only use 40% of the self-generated energy in that building at the same time. Typically, more than half of that energy is being fed back to the grid because we generate energy during the day while we are not at home during the day, and we use that energy for cooking, for heating in the evenings. So that means, yes, there's sustainable energy, but no, we don't use it. That will become even stronger when we start to connect our buildings to, for example, electric vehicles. And what happens, and we see that across regions of Europe that are heavily investing in PV, and that are heavily investing in, for example, a disconnection from gas, like the Netherlands, where I'm from, we see that the energy system is in balance. At the same time, we see that the European Commission is also deregulating Europe's energy system or energy markets, which means that for the moment you get for self-generated PV that you consume, great. For energy that you don't consume, you feed back to the grid, you used to get 100% of that value back. That feed-in tariffs are decreasing. And that means the business case for PV is going down. So what we see happening is an increasingly inefficient, surprisingly, local energy system. And we believe that new types of solutions are needed for that, especially because those energy systems have a massive social cost. When we look, for example, at the Netherlands, we see that a city district of maybe 10,000 households, so roughly count, let's say 100 to 500 apartment blocks, when those become renovated and electrify and get PV panels, we see that the energy distribution system probably needs to double in capacity, which per household typically has a cost of 50 to 100 euros a year for the duration of 10 years to offset. And what we see happening is that the individual building owners, public sector, commercial, private sector, they're finding locally optimized solutions. And a few years later, we'll see that there are societally or on district level very suboptimal solutions. And that needs to be balanced in a way. And what Starke Energy, our company, tries to do is we try to deliver solutions that help those energy imbalances. And we do that through a combination of energy storage, a battery, and services that make sure that energy is being stored where needed, but also is being directed towards those users or towards those services, as we call it, where energy provides the highest value. So in this sort of a simple diagram, as you see here on the left side of the slides, we see that an increasing number of buildings have PV. And as mentioned, more than half of that energy is usually fed back to the grid. If you'd install a battery, your typical lithium-ion battery, into the building, you could actually store that energy to use for building services, like an elevator. And or you could actually direct that energy towards the tenants or the users of that building, so it actually goes behind the meter. That self-consumption is, in actually in many cases, not yet financially viable, but what it does do with the changing feed-in tariffs, it will become financially viable, but it also increases the level of sustainability of energy. Since it's locally generated, CO2-free, if you'd also consume that yourself, you actually have energy-neutral buildings and services. Well, in reality, if you would feed back that energy back into the grid and afterwards purchase it again, what you're actually buying is gray energy. So you're not, as a building owner or building user, you're not living up to your own ambition of being energy neutral. But what is more important and more interesting is that we know that storing energy is still not cost efficient. The deregulation of European energy markets allow to use that energy when you store it to provide additional services. And that's what we see at the left bottom of this slide. Once buildings become more electrified, the peak energy consumption goes up, for example, when tenants cook. But it also means that the distribution service operator, the DSO, needs to increase its grid capacity. It needs to install new cables, needs to install new distribution centers, unless the building itself has some storage. And in some countries, and we see that happening in the UK, which is more deregulated, but also in the Netherlands and some other regions, DSOs start to look for ways that building owners create that local buffer capacity. So there's a potential income stream for paying for storage. And at the same time, and I think that's currently the most important one, national energy markets or electricity markets are also being deregulated, which means that as a building owner or as a local entity, you're able to offer your storage capacity, which is, it could be the electricity itself, the power, but also the fact that you can store energy. You can offer that at national energy markets. And what that does, and then we move to the the right side of this slide, is when you look at capital-intensive solutions like building energy storage, if you start combining those services of increasing your self-consumption, reducing the pressure on the local distribution grids, and offering storage to national levels, we see that energy storage has both a CO2 impact, a positive impact, and actually could become a cost-efficient solution. And that's what we at Starke Energy offer. Very simple terms. I will not go into technology that much. It's basically it's a battery in your basement. You'll see one on the picture here. I think we're all aware that cars are becoming electric. They're still very expensive. But if you look at stationary batteries, like the ones you see here, it could have a nicer box, but it's actually relatively cheap. Energy or storage now costs about 350 euros per kilowatt. Your typical apartment building would have about 100 to 200 kilowatts. So that's 50,000 euros of investment. And those prices are dropping steadily. We believe now that that could be actually break even on an 8 to 9 year period, which makes it storage solution almost as cost effective as, for example, PV is in most Northwest European countries, or the low-hanging fruit of building renovation itself. Yeah, I will not go into it as much. Using energy for different purposes, like building energy services, trading on wholesale markets, it's technically fairly complex. It involves IoT. That's what I would love to talk for half an hour about, but I don't think we can do that during this call. What I would like to move on to is towards an actual case. So what we currently see happening is that in an environment where a lot of local authorities are investing in rooftop PV, for example, they're now faced with acceptable investments. So the payback is 7 to 9 years. At the same time, what we see firsthand happening in the Netherlands and Spain, where we operate, is most of these investments do not take into account the reducing feedback tariffs, which means that actually business case is a bit more negative than what most organizations expect. What we are suggesting in combining all these different financial, let's say the energy service in a single battery, is looking at the value of self-consumption of energy, but at the same time looking at these different energy trading services. And what you, for example, will be looking at scale, the other focus of this session is if you, for example, are a local authority, or if you're a large-scale housing provider, you would be looking at finding an optimal energy system solution covering dozens of buildings, or maybe even close to 100 high-rises if you're a larger city. If we look at the case, in the image that you see is a social housing provider in the Netherlands, which is a country that's where ownership of residential buildings is fairly concentrated, unlike in the rest of Europe. And there you would, for example, see that a scale solution, so a large-scale solution for energy storage and local energy balancing services, when you look at the period of 2025, 2030, would actually show that the initial investment at building level is maybe 50 to 70,000 euros a year, depending on the kind of storage that you need, while the average lifetime income of energy services are about 40% higher. So it's actually a profitable service, and that's what we're currently developing. We're doing so in Spain and the Netherlands. So what you see here is going live next week is a storage and trading solution in Manzanera in Spain, it's Galicia, and a medium-sized office building in close to Amsterdam in the Netherlands with a social housing provider. What we actually face, and that's me wrapping up, I see, Katharina, that we're out of time almost, is the main question that I posed at the start of my presentation. If you're a local authority and if you're looking for commercially driven or commercially viable services when it comes to sustainability, think about your procurement model. It is about scale, and it's about sharing risks and sharing benefits with the private sector. And what we're looking at, I think it was also mentioned by Antoon earlier on, look at energy investments at 10 or 20 million euros or more, and that's when you get the private sector involved in and finding them as a partner in what you're trying to do. Thank you very much, Katharina.
Thank you, Rolf, for that very interesting experience. Yet another angle. There is a question for you in the chat. Basically, that was posted when you were presenting the battery storage. What's the brand, and did you have to overcome any technical challenges?
I think they're very limited technical challenges. Batteries are, as a technology, have been proven. The question is connecting storage to the different energy markets, consuming it within a building or sending the energy to national energy markets like the frequency containment reserve markets. And that's the ICT has been solved. It's commercially operational in at least 6 European countries, hundreds and thousands of buildings connected. It's more about risk management, since some of the income streams are not predictable. Offering your energy or your storage at wholesale markets has a major risk component.
Okay, thank you very much, and also for that perspective. It is time for us to wrap up, so I would like to ask Leen again to the virtual stage, and just share maybe some reflections on this session before we wrap up.
Hi. So I've tried to make concise minutes, bringing all the stories together. But I think what Rolf mentioned, and in the end, it's about risk sharing and making sure that we do make that difference between what we can do at the public level and what we can do at the private level. That is something we try to have more attention to. What I mean with that is that what Antoon said links me to a previous project about project development assistance, where the municipality and the province spend a lot of money on trying to prepare the projects and bundle them and then go to the ESCOs. And what both Rolf and Antoon are indicating is that doing that, you are actually asking them to continue to work on your calculations as a public service institute, but then you ask the ESCO also to start with foundations that they haven't built themselves, which of course puts a higher risk, because then they also have to account a risk for your mistakes. So I think we have to fundamentally rethink how we do that procurement in the future to make sure that these innovative and needed and proven concepts can be launched. And I think what Andreas mentioned on Elena is a well-known system, is a bit linked to that. It's really to help these entities to prepare, help these public companies, but also now private companies, to prepare these investment programs. Although there are still some hiccups, Andreas, on some of the ways of interpreting the Elena rules, I think it is a fundamentally good program that really helps to realize what is not top innovation, but it is really proven energy efficiency and renewable energy technology. So I think that brings it really interesting angle to see, okay, cities, municipalities, how do you get started in bundling projects and making sure they're happening? But I did really like the approach that Wouter brought, where you can see that it's not only cities that can ask or that can buy a number of these counters, of these Telraam, but it could be also a number of citizens who could actually use these Telraam to move and to push the city towards a different approach for mobility. And I think that is an underestimated power, the power of the citizens themselves. And it is cheap. And maybe, Wouter, you can even go to a model of leasing these things and resharing or reselling these. But it could really help to be able to go to your municipality or city and say, guys, this is what effectively is the problem of what you're doing here, or this is the consequence of a measure you took. And I think that is where citizens have more power than what we believe today. It was also very interesting to see Soo-Jin focusing on smart city projects in Russia, which I never was aware of that it happened there. So really thank you also for bringing that angle, and maybe it would be worth to dive into that and see how they do things, knowing that the economic situation will even be more critical there. So I'm happy to have seen all of these presentations. I'm proud of the way you presented it and the encouragement that you gave for others to really pick it up themselves. So thank you all.
Thank you, Leen, for this very comprehensive wrap up and your reflections on what we heard today. I hope that we could manage to achieve the objectives that Leen set out earlier, that you did get some inspiring insights into examples you might not have heard of before, into tools and systems that might be useful for you in your further work. Again, participants of today are, of course, also in the attendees list. So if you want to contact them, you can chat with them, you can send them a message. Of course, an email works just as fine, but you know how to reach them if you want to know more. So I want to thank you all for your participation. I want the speakers for preparing such insightful presentations. I do also want to thank Agatha, who's been working in the background also to make these presentations as visually attractive as they were. But now I want to wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Enjoy your evening. Tomorrow there is the second day of the conference of the General Assembly, and we hope to all see you back then. So thank you very much and have a great evening.
Thank you.